Hello everyone, and welcome to Insight Meditation Community of Charlotte. And welcome to everyone back home in Zoom. So glad you're here. Hello everyone. Perhaps we can turn right or left or behind to maybe wave to a neighbor and one of our fellow Sangha members and see our friends, our meditation friends. Very good. So my name is Denise, and I'm one of the Dharma leaders here at IMCC. And tonight I will be talking on the Buddha's teaching on the 8 worldly winds. So if we think about these strong summer storms that we get, I think the wind can be both fascinating and scary at the same time. It has the power to break that which we think is so substantial. And what once stood unwavering is gone in an instant. The wind can uproot familiar fixtures in our environment. And strangely enough, 2 weeks later, we can barely remember what was there. Has anyone had that experience? But some sturdy objects have the ability to bend with the wind and then resiliently bounce back. At times we try to catch what the wind is blowing by us, to grasp on. And at other times we realize it's too tricky to hold on and we let go. Praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and disrepute, pleasure and sorrow come and go like the wind. The Buddha tells us to be happy and rest like a giant tree in the midst of them all. Not long ago, I had caught up with a friend at a local dance, and I asked her how things were going for her. And she said very enthusiastically, intermittently. And after a moment, I realized that's so true. It's the first time I've ever heard that. The moral of this teaching of the 8 worldly winds is that they come and go. None is inherently good or bad, or right or wrong, and none of them is devoid of suffering. None of them is where we should rank our self-worth or assign ourselves, this is me, or who we are. Also, we can try with all of our might to positively affect an outcome, but many factors are out of our control. Each of these winds is primarily based on external conditions, and it's not based on one's internal locus of integrity or authenticity. Our chosen actions are only one piece of the interdependent puzzle that makes the world go round. These conditions are just unstable. Perhaps many of you are familiar with the story of the farmer and the horse. A farmer had only one horse, and that horse ran away. His neighbor said, "I'm so sorry. You must be so upset. This is such bad news." The farmer just said, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse came back with a wild horse following it. And the neighbor said, "Congratulations, you must be so happy. This is such great news." And the farmer replied, "Maybe." The wild horse threw the farmer's only son, breaking his legs. And the neighbor said, "I am so sorry. This is such bad news." And the farmer said, "Maybe." Well, the country went to war, and every able-bodied young man was drafted to fight. Well, the farmer's son did not go because he couldn't make the draft because of the broken legs. But the rest of the young men were killed. And the neighbor said, "Congratulations, you must be so happy. This is such good news." And the farmer said, "Maybe." You got it. Our situations are always changing. They are interconnected with many other factors. Gains and losses are not always what they appear to be at first glance. If we were to win the lottery, there might be a lot of jubilation, and we might have more financial security, perhaps have time and freedom to travel and purchase something we want. But then comes the headache of managing the money. I'm sure some of you are still thinking, I can do this, right? Okay. And then to protect our new precious goods, and the weight of navigating relationships to those who might not feel as jubilant about your winnings. Another example I thought of was a couple of years ago. I was on Highway 51 by Carmel Commons, crossing over Carmel Road, and I was stopped at the stoplight. And I was hit very hard from behind by a lady in a Chevy Tahoe. And I thought for sure my car was crumpled and my neck hurt immediately. I got out of the car. I'm in the middle lane. It's not easy to move around. And I didn't see a scratch on the car. And I don't know how that happened. So I got back in the car, and I thought to myself, well, now maybe finally my neck will loosen up. And it did. Okay? So I didn't pay you for the treatment, I'll tell you that. Okay. Spiritual writer Alan Watts said, reality is interdependent and of a complex nature. We shall never know if what happens is good or bad, because we shall never know all the consequences of misfortune or all the consequences of good fortune. The Buddha taught on the 8 worldly winds in a sutta called the Lokavipatti Sutta. And he starts off saying, monks, these 8 worldly conditions spin after the world, and the world spins after these 8. And it is true for both the uninstructed average person and for the well-instructed disciple. There arises gain and loss, status and disgrace, censure and praise, pleasure and pain. But there's a difference. The uninstructed person does not reflect. Gain has arisen in me. Gain is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. And the same is true for loss, status, disgrace, censure, praise, pleasure, and pain arising. He does not discern it as it actually is. His mind remains consumed with gain, consumed with loss and status, etc., and a mind consumed with pain. He welcomes the arisen gain, and he rebels against the arisen loss. Now, this gain also arises for the well-instructed disciple. But he does reflect. This gain has arisen in me. It's inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He discerns it as it actually is. And the same is true for the other 7 worldly winds. His mind does not remain consumed with any of these conditions. He is more equanimous. These conditions come and go like the wind. Each is impermanent and will change with time. So he is released from stress. Knowing this, the wise person, mindful, ponders these conditions as they change. Some of you during your meditation may have noticed as the breath changed, or the pleasant changed, or the unpleasant changed. The desirable things for the wise person does not charm the mind, and the undesirable ones bring no resistance. I remember years ago working with a teammate, Dr. Mary, who advised, she said, don't take credit for a positive patient outcome or for the negative patient outcome. There are too many other factors that influence the outcome, and it interferes with keeping a clear mind when we move on to the next patient. So just as the Buddha taught, don't attach to outcome. See if you can ponder this the next time you are contemplating which is the best grocery store line to choose. I can become quite embroiled in an analytical debate with myself over choosing the grocery store line. I am in pursuit of the time gain, and the pleasure of winning against all odds. But the truth is, 99% of the time, I've completely forgotten about this the minute I'm out the door. I'm sure you've already noticed this, but the 8 worldly winds are 4 pairs of opposites. Dualism is a theory that reality consists of 2 fundamental, distinct, and often opposing elements: mind and matter, good and evil, right and wrong, black and white, which leads to delusion because it ignores the shades of gray, the spectrum of experience that lies between the extremes. This binary thinking, just by definition alone, creates division by seeing things as being opposed or mutually exclusive. And holding on to binary views separates and disconnects. It can isolate us by otherizing other people and situations. Look at how divided our society has become. You have to be wrong for me to be right. This leads to discomfort, sadness, and anger. And now our relationship is not right. When we don't see these events clearly for what they are, we fail to recognize the full range of experiences simultaneously occurring with each event. We crave to see black and white, or to know right and wrong, to make sense of our world, to give us a sense of clarity and security, and relief from the chore of navigating all those shades of gray in our daily decisions. But if we don't take that journey into these perspectives, we also miss the richness and the nuances of our experiences. We wind up with limited views of what is happening and what is acceptable and what is not. One of the resources I used for tonight was, I found it online, the Bhavana Learning Group, and they had a series called Our Happiness Dilemma. They talked about how people find themselves consumed with materialistic pursuits, pleasure-seeking, and hyper-individualism when striving for comfort and happiness. These 4 pairs, the 8 worldly winds, are habitual attitudes or desires that can undermine our happiness and inner peace, because we anxiously strive to attain and keep the gain, fame, praise, and pleasure. And we do everything possible we can to avoid the loss, the disgrace, criticism, and pain. These fleeting egoic desires cause individuals to experience a roller coaster of emotions as they fluctuate between each pair of concerns. We can choose, are we going to take this push-pull, or we can actively choose to practice non-attachment. So now I'd like to take a little closer look at each of the 4 pairs, starting with gain and loss, or what you might call success and failure. Gain can be of material possessions, wealth, status, or success. And loss would be failing to achieve that same material possession, wealth, status, or success. To bring peace and to reduce anxiety, we want to let go of our self-worth with material possessions and relationships. They are based on external possessions and achievement based on external standards. This leads to greed and competitiveness, sowing the seed for separation rather than inner peace and connection. Now we'll look at fame and disgrace. We are obsessed with fame and afraid of our own insignificance, cultivating pride and vanity that comes along with a big dose of insecurity, because it's impermanent. We could lose this at any moment. Fame and fear of disgrace are rooted in external validation and social status over inner values and ethical conduct. And social media isn't helping us with this influence culture, with many believing that developing personal branding is vital even before we discern who we are as human beings. The second of the Four Noble Truths is the truth that we suffer because we are grasping for the conditions we want. And in this particular case, we're looking for becoming, meaning to appear a certain way. It's important to understand the purpose and limitations of a personal brand. It reduces and externalizes our whole being as an object of consumption. A personal brand is an asset to optimize and not an authentic being to realize. We become manufactured. For fame, we must give up our true nature. Now I want to look at the third, which is praise and blame. Here, blame is more personal, but it's still rooted in external validation. We seek this validation so we don't doubt our own worth. We try to hide our shadow side so people don't see our less than desirable characteristics. Here, it's still clinging, but it's clinging to non-becoming, which we don't want to look and present a certain way. We each want acceptance and approval and to avoid criticism, so we turn away from self-awareness and inner confidence, thus betraying ourselves. Additionally, with self-identification, as fed by praise, we tend towards arrogance and pride, basking in the idea of me. And humility, gratitude, and wisdom go right out the window. When we are healthy and know who we are authentically, we can handle feedback, criticism, with perspective and understanding. Some of you may have heard this before, but I love this saying. They say when some people offer criticism, and we know there's some truth to what they're saying, well, then we have something to learn about ourselves. And then we learn something also if we honestly and clearly see that the criticism's not valid. We learn something about that other person. The next pair is pleasure and pain, or pleasant and sorrow. Attachment to pleasure and aversion to pain leads to chasing fleeting pleasures while resisting and denying the experiences of discomfort. These conditions will appear in our lives, but don't believe they're going to stay like that. Accept the moment as just reality. Be with each they all have to offer us. Nothing is all good or all bad. The example that came to my mind, when my brother passed away at 18 years old from bone cancer, it seemed really bad. But the truth is, there was a tremendous amount of relief in him passing away from his suffering and for the suffering of the family and those around us. That's the truth. It's not bad, it's just the truth. Our current age offers an abundance of access to peoples, material goods, fears, misinformation, and an overwhelming array of seductions. These are external conditions that pull us in. We want to be aware to notice that. We are inundated by alternative facts and companies that see us as commodities. We're consumed with overstimulation. Some of us are very addicted to overstimulation. I would be one of those. That might seem like pleasure, but we were never conditioned to evaluate and digest this level of access, and it leads to distress. Finding balance itself can become a source of anxiety as we find ourselves navigating the obsessions and the extremes. Did anyone feel any discomfort as you were in your meditation, striving for a calmer meditation? Be alert to the truth of what's actually happening and escape the tension of being sucked in by these external pressures and pleasures. This was on another website. It was a kind of cute name. It says Refuge Boutique. So instead of boutique, it was boutique. Boutique, okay. So it said the 8 worldly winds keep us imprisoned with a very limited worldview. They are generally driven by unconscious beliefs, basic instincts, and societal norms that might fulfill us, or by fear of being affected by the opposite. It's futile to try to build one's self-worth or invest any emotional energy into these things which are beyond our control. Reflect when gain, when loss, status, disgrace, praise, criticism, pleasure, and pain arise. These are inconstant and subject to change. Accept the conditions as is. Refrain from being consumed by them. Don't let them charm you, and don't let them disarm you. Stay steady like a giant, well-rooted tree.